Hello to the chicos, hello to the chicas. I'm bringing you a topic today that I have been meaning to cover for a while, and in fact there will be multiple videos made on this topic. This is going to be the first one when we are going to discuss the topic of trades. The other day I came across a game played by a student which presented the absolute best material as an introduction for the topic, because pretty much every trade we did in the game was wrong, including the ones that we committed to and the ones that we avoided. So it was a really heavily focused game in that sense around the very topic, the one topic, which was trades. So without further ado, let's dive in. The game was played between two 900 rated-ish players, but as you will see, you would not have guessed that rating based on the general look of the game, despite the numerous small mistakes, but no blunders. So it is a semi-Tarash. Student is playing with the white pieces, by the way. And so we follow theory, unknowingly, by the way. He was out of book, I think, about here. So, kudos, by the way. So we played the bishop d3. I really don't dislike this move. In fact, on 900 rated level, I would say that this is one of the best possible moves available for white. If we are adding another 1,500 rating points to the 900, then we would be looking at bishop c4, rook c1, or the currently very trendy h4. But bishop d3 is totally fine. Knight c6, e5. Now, this is a very clever way to defend the d4 pawn, which now of course is not capturable on account of the cheeky bishop takes h7 trick. So once again, clearly the player in the white trunks is punching above his weight when playing this well. Queen e7 played a very strange move, and now I would like to switch out from the context of 900s and just offer objective criticism of the moves that need criticizing. So queen e7 makes no sense, or very little. It floats the idea of queen b4, but essentially forces us to castle, which is something we wanted to do. I mean, it allows rook d8, but that is a threat that is super easy to deal with. Not to mention the fact that it's actually a non-threat, because this is still not hanging. So if I wanted to, I can still play rook d1. I've got more pieces than I can count that can sufficiently defend d4. So yeah, instead of queen e7, b6, bishop b7 seemed most obvious for black. So queen e7 played, and unfortunately here white decided that the d4 pawn desperately needed defense. Don't know why. And we played queen e3. And unfortunately this exposed our king to a check on b4, to which we responded, obviously we missed this, by the logical queen d2. Now, since we have got more space, the black king is quite vulnerable to an incoming attack with queen e4. Of course, the last thing we want to do is to castle, and so king f1 is a no-brainer. Ah, but I lose castling rights. Yeah, is that important? No, not at all, because black cannot exploit the fact that I can't castle. The attacking pattern very often involves h4 anyway, which means that I can develop the rook via h3, which means that the king just gets castled by hand. Totally fine. In fact, white is much better here. As in, like, it's about 0.6. That's a noticeable advantage out of an opening. But unfortunately, lower rated players are often locked in within boundaries that they set themselves, and like this move of, oh, giving up castling rights wouldn't even have occurred. So queen d2, first bad trade. So we really wouldn't want to trade queens, because in the long run our pawn structure is definitely inferior to black's owing to the backward d pawn. But still, this position is super easy to play for white. We can chuck a king on e3, rook on c1, rook on b1. In fact, I would argue that for a while it's still easier to play for white than black. Rook e8 played, absolute utter nonsense, and this hands the advantage back to white firmly, who now should be playing rook c1 without any hesitation whatsoever, since again, black's best setup is based on putting the bishop on the long diagonal where it covers the d5 square, and just in general, it shoots beautifully down along the diagonal. So yeah, rook c1 was a no-brainer here. Instead, we played king e3. Now, this is a secondary theme of the game, that we keep on hugging this d4 pawn at times when it's completely unnecessary and uncalled for. And on both occasions, we paid the price. First, it was queen e3. Now, it's king e3. Knight b4, quite annoying. Bishop e4 and knight d5 check played. Now, here comes the second dilemma. In terms of trades. Should we trade? Should we not trade? And of course, when we consider this, then we try to rely first on principles, which is not a bad thing. And the principle would be, but even this is far-fetched, that we don't want to trade bishops for knights. And that's fair enough. Except there are at least two other things that immediately jump at us. One is that by trading on d5, we eliminate the outpost. Hello? We eliminate the backward pawn. Hello? And we create a reasonably bad bishop. I mean, the only fixed pawn is fixed on white. Right? So it's not exactly... it wouldn't be a subject of a letter that I would want to write home about, that, oh, look, I have got a bishop. Awesome, isn't it? It's like, nope. And most importantly, what we failed to take into account here was the rest of the army, the rest of the board, basically everything. Because yes, it's bishop versus knight. Once again, that's already a refuted argument because this bishop is pretty bad. But on top of that, hello c-file, hello rooks, I am coming in. What are these guys doing? Not a lot. Black is in severe trouble here. Easy peasy decision that this capture had to be made. Rook c1, rook c5, pile up, threatening to come in, threatening to move the knight, then go f4, then I can play for h3, g4, f5. All the plays in white's hand. The two pawns on the queen side never gonna play a role. Super easy advantage to white, not even close. But unfortunately, we were guilty here of the one principle-itis, which is that we considered that when there are pawns on both wings, then bishops are better than knights, and so we decided to not to trade. Yeah, now obviously this is an issue with lower rated players, that when they learn and understand the principle, then they tend to address all of their problems through that principle, because that provides them a sense of understanding the position. The problem is that that's a tiny segment of the position, and we need to take into account 5 other things and then merge them together and see which one will stand out as the most relevant, and then act on that one. But of course, that is exactly what chess growth looks like in a nutshell. So we didn't take, and in fact we played king e2, which in a way invited a trade, third trade mistake, because now we are inviting knight c3 take, which is a vastly different story, because the pawn is not on d5, which means that there is still a backward pawn, and there is a glorious diagonal for the bishop to occupy. Either that, or bishop d7 and then bishop c6, which is equally good. Now, objectively speaking, the position is still dead drawn, but now white needs to be careful. We played rook c1, perfect, check, king e3, perfect, takes, and for the third and final time in this game, for some absolutely inexplicable reason, we thought that this pawn couldn't be left alone. I really don't understand why such a passive and defensive mentality could outmuscle common sense, because I have got 3 potential defenders and they have 2 potential attackers. So the maths can never ever work out to be in black's favor when it comes to attacking the d4 pawn. Like, I just can't possibly fathom what is there to be afraid of. I have an extra rock and I don't even have to worry about the pawn anymore. So taking back on f3 with the pawn was the 4th tragic recapture mistake. we are still in the game, rook c8. And at this point, I offered my student an insight when I looked at the game, and that was, and I knew right away how this game ended, by the way, was that if you look at this without calculating a single move, you realize that if I remove all rooks from the board, we are lost because of outside pass pawn. They have got a 2-on-1 on the queen side. That is going to force our king to attend to that business. In the interim, the black king is going to come in here, eat up the d4 pawn and the rest of the king side. So as long as you don't trade all rooks, you are golden. We played king d3, king f8, rook b1, sensible, b6. And this is what the next video on this topic is going to be assigned to. When club level players don't know what to do, 9 times out of 10 they trade. And they do this on the assumption that as long as I trade equal value, I retain the evaluation of the position, which is also wrong in about 9 out of 10 cases. So this trade is okay, but now we needed to do something productive. f4 is a decent move, a4, a5 is a very, very handy idea to split the pawns, then win one of them, and it's super easy draw. Endless options really of doing things. King d2 is already a terrible move because it allows black to play rook c4 and activate the rook, attacking multiple pawns. But worse still, the only comprehensible reason why one would play king d2 is because they want to play rook c1, which of course is the ultimate why would you do that, and that trade has led to our demise. Now I don't want to turn this into, you know, a bitter story, so I'm going to spare you from the rest, but suffice to say that actually black misplayed his pawn ending so poorly that at one point white was even winning in the endgame, but eventually black prevailed and ended up winning. So quick summary of the trades, by the way, that we messed up. So the first one, we desperately needed to not trade queens here. We have more space and we have got kingside attacking prospects on account of all black pieces except for the rook being on the queen side, and the king is lacking defenders. You have queen e4, you have h4, h5, h6, you have rook lift to play for. It's like, it has fun written on it with capital letters. Once the queens come off, now we have a structural issue. They don't. Who wants that? Not pleasant. Number two, we are here finally in a position where we can deal with the backward pawn forever by trading the knight, luring the pawn in. Yes, it does open up the bishop, but in a way it also blocks it by having a pawn on a light square, and we obtain the open file, penetration points. White is clearly better. We opt out of it and blunder into the same trade, except that now the structural weakness remains. Then the next trade we take back with the incorrect piece on account of incomprehensible fear of the pawn on d4 being weak. And the final nail in the coffin is that we don't recognize the basic pattern of outside pass pawn versus a pawn mess that cannot create a pass pawn. Therefore, rook trades are strictly forbidden. And so after the fifth terrible trade, actually to be fair to my student, the first rook trade was okay. But the fifth bad trade has led to what would under normal circumstances be an irreparably dead lost position. So long story short, folks, is that trading is an art. It's it is something that you need to master, and very, very often in good, deep games where strategy is really relevant, trades should be carried out with a lot more thought, with a lot more consideration, and a lot more care. So this idea of if I trade a knight for a knight that's equal value, therefore let's go, that is not you know, worthy of this beautiful strategic game we call chess, because almost every single trade has further implications other than the numeric value of the pieces that come off of the board. So I hope that this was a fairly decent introduction to the topic of trades. And as I said, there is more to come. But for now, this is it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please don't forget to smash the like button, leave comments down below. Please, please, please subscribe if you haven't done so. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.